All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. If you're listening live or if you are listening to the recording, we're so glad to have you here. Today, we are having an SMS panel discussion talking about careers in social media. I am not sure if it's possible to be more excited for a conversation than I am for this conversation today. This is the kind of stuff that I love. I've had the opportunity of knowing our three panelists for a while and then getting to know them even more preparing for this panel. So you are all in for a treat, I promise. So what we will do to kick things off, it's a little bit different today. I will remind our certified social media strategists that to engage and participate. We don't have polls today. We have a little bit of a different format. But please do engage in the chat, send questions in, all of that good stuff. I will also continue to remind you to send questions in for our panelists as we go along, because I know sometimes as people start talking, you get kind of engrossed in their answers, and then you forget, like, oh, I've got to put my question out there. So I will have that reminder a few times. And you can also ask a question of the entire panel, or as we learn a little bit more about each of our panelists' areas of expertise, you can ask a specific panelist a question as well. Just be sure to indicate that when you submit your question. So as always, we do have a few more NISM webinars on the books. On February 22nd, we've got one coming up. It isn't quite on the website yet, so I just wanted to share today to check back within the next couple of days, and that one will be posted there. It's a magical, magical month. We have less days and more webinars. We squeezed a third webinar into February. So and then coming up on March 2nd, we have a website analytics with Molly Nicholson coming up as well. So all kinds of good stuff there. So that's my housekeeping reminders. So we are going to go around the horn. Again, for those of you that were here early, you heard a little bit from our panelists while we were testing kind of our background noise and audio. But I'm going to ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves again with their name, their role, and the organization they are associated with. So we'll go on my screen. I've got Amanda, Katie, and Ashley. So Amanda, please introduce yourself.
Okay. I am Amanda Andreessen, and I am the Digital Communication and Engagement Coordinator for the University of Nebraska-Kearney. Really what that means is that I manage the main university social channels. That's something that I've done for the last 9 years, which is kind of crazy when you stop to think about it. So this role has evolved since I've been in it, and new addition to my job duties, I also handle texting campaigns for all of our departments outside of admissions. And then I manage the website chatbot when it's active. So
that's amazing. Just giving props. So I'm Katie Spencer-Johnson. I am a social media strategist, educator, and consultant. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for House of Possibilities, which is a disability services nonprofit provider working with children and adults with disabilities outside of Boston. My role encompasses, I am a one-person marketing team. So my role encompasses every single piece of marketing that you could think of. So email, communications, print collateral. I manage all of our social media accounts, advertising, our website. And prior to this role, I've only been in the role for 6 months. I was in higher education, and I've worked across industries, including finance, publishing, insurance, and healthcare.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Hunter. I have a small consulting firm called Two Hunters Consulting, where we do a little bit of everything. I currently manage the website and social media accounts for a client of mine called Savvy Coders, which is a coding boot camp. And then also in the day job that I have, I've been in transportation where I consult and at times, if they'll let me, take and manage their social media and help grow their brands.
well, I forgot to introduce myself. I do that sometimes when I get super excited about what I'm talking about. I've done entire presentations, like hundreds of people, and I like just like burst on the scene and start talking, and then 10 minutes in, I'm like, wouldn't it be awkward if I wasn't the presenter today? I'm just gonna back up and introduce myself and assure you I'm all supposed to be here. So I'm Amy Jalman. I'm the certification director for the National Institute for Social Media. I have been certified for, I've lost track. I think I've recertified 3 times. So that would mean over 7 years, something like that. And I might chime in as a certified strategist myself. So I'm the moderator, but I have so many opinions. They just fly out of my mouth sometimes. So we will kick our questions off. And we have a couple in the can already that we are ready to share with our presenters, but this is a special session and we are looking to get questions from the group. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And when you put them in the chat, you can just ask a question. It will pop up for everyone to see, or you can type at National Institute for Social Media and then mark it as a private message and it will come directly to me. Either way is a great way to get your question in front of the panel and we'll put it in the queue. So go ahead and send that in at any time while our panelists are addressing our questions. So starting off, we are going to start with kind of an obvious one. And we're going to ask each of you to answer this, which is, why did you decide to pursue your SMS? And we're going to go in a little different order just to shake things up. I'm going to ask Katie and then Ashley and then Amanda to answer that one. So there's your order. Katie, kick us off. What was the catalyst? How did you get started?
Yeah, so I started my career like many social media marketing professionals with a background and a degree outside of the field. So I learned in the trenches. I learned doing the role. I graduated from Wheaton College in Massachusetts with a degree in education. In English, not education. Ooh, and started my career in publishing. And so as I transitioned industries and kind of gravitated towards marketing and social media and media relations, I really found that my success, albeit defined by my marketing efforts, I really wanted the certification to provide some validation to my expertise and to my experience. And unfortunately, all too often, our expertise in this field is challenged because the accessibility of our role, right? So everyone and anyone can have access to social, but really, are they doing it well? I chose SMS in particular because of the depth and breadth, right, of the certification. It's not Hootsuite or Google Analytics, although those are very super valid certifications. SMS helps us and certifies us to be able to connect the dots between governance and compliance, strategy, analysis, and really to help me evolve as a marketer. So for me, it was really about validation, for one, confidence in my abilities, helping boost that a little bit, given that my degree was not in the field of marketing or communications, and to really, pursue continued education once I was certified.
That makes so much sense. And another fun thing about expert panels like this, and I hope our whole audience is experiencing this as well, you start to see these parallels, right? Like you notice as people are talking, you're like, yes, this is also my life. I feel that. I have been there. Katie, you talked specifically about how easy it is for anybody to enter into social media. Do you find yourself in your role also educating your clients? Even like once you're in, like once they've already picked you as a certified strategist, like they somehow got that. Do you does that open the door to continue that conversation?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think the nature of our roles, obviously social media changes, platforms change, use changes on those social media platforms. So there is an evolution that we have to go through as strategists, but we also have to carry that information and that knowledge across to our clients in a way that is understandable and easily digestible. So much of what we do is kind of translating the technical side of social media into what does this mean for your business or your organization as a whole, and more importantly, what does this mean for your marketing strategy?
When I work with younger newer to the field marketing professionals, I often have to have the conversation about this goal is so often like, I want to look smart and I want to convince them how much I know, but it's so much more important to meet them where they are, use language that they understand, and leave them educated, right? Leave them smarter than when you started working with them. So
absolutely.
Ashley, how did you end up pursuing your SMS?
Well, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I have a degree in Spanish and also with a master's in teaching English as a second language. It all boiled down to getting together with my husband and starting to own a business and not knowing anything about what I was doing. And I was told when it came to marketing for the business, hey, you're doing really good in this. But I was still stuck in that I went to school to do education. I'm going to stick with education. So fast forward like 8 or 9 years later, and I started doing the social media without real, certification and anything to prove my worth, so to say. Um, and I went to the marketing conference that is here in St. Louis, sponsored by UMSL. Listened to Jen, and I started to go, well, wait a minute, maybe I should look into that. So fast forward another year later, and I finally registered, got the book, and ended up being after I was certified and being really like confident in realizing that, hey, I can do this, because I know I had told Jen that this was the very first certification test that I had ever passed.
Yep.
So it made me realize, hey, you can actually do this, and you actually know what you're doing. So that was the reasons as to why.
We hear from a lot of people this, even if they're working in social media and they feel kind of okay about it. And we're going to talk about this more later, because some of our questions already coming in are around test anxiety and all of that. But exactly, actually, what you described, a lot of people have a history with test taking, whether it be certifications or exams in school, because it's a different animal, right? Like taking an exam is different than work experience, is different than essay writing, is different than all these different ways that we have of assessing knowledge. So we're so glad that you took the leap and that you got sucked into the realm of Jen Radke, which, if you hear her speak, happens a lot. We hear that a lot, so that's good. And thanks for being here today. And that brings us around to Amanda. How did you get here?
Yeah, so like Katie and Ashley, my original background, of course, was not in PR, communication, social media. It was actually in web design. And so I was originally hired as an assistant web designer. And after I started, they said, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to manage our social media. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I have Facebook. Yeah, no big deal. Wow. I really, I had no idea. So literally this last 9 years has been on the job training from day one. So I knew obviously that it was a lot bigger than, just like having your own Facebook page. I mean, I say that now, and that's what I hear from people, on my campus who want to start social media. So I've been there. And so I knew I needed, to do a lot of my own education just so I would feel comfortable, walking into a room and, representing the university on social. So I actually went through a certificate program at a school, and it was social media based. And I went through it and I finished, and I was kind of disappointed because I felt like what I was being taught was just really from a book. It wasn't from people who were, in the trenches and doing social every day. So I started looking around, Katie, you mentioned there are all of those certifications out there for specific platforms. So you've got like a Facebook Blueprint and, Twitter Flight School and Hootsuite certification, all of those. And those are all great. Those all have their place. But I just knew that I wanted something specifically in social media and I wanted to work with people who were doing it every day and, who understood the challenges and everything that came with that. So I found NISM, and I think from the time that I registered and like signed up, it was 2 months before I studied, took the test, and now here we are. I've done one recertification, and I just finished that last year. So I'm in the new span of the couple of years, and then we'll recert again.
Funny, because when that recertification comes up, as much as we're like totally worth it, the test isn't as bad as you think, that recertification window comes up though, and you're like, yeah, because if I don't recertify, I'm gonna have to take the test again. So I mean, like, there's healthy motivation there to keep those credentials up through recertification.
Yeah.
We're not saying testing is fun, is my point.
It's important, but not necessarily fun.
Exactly. Amanda, we've got a great comment I want to share here, but I also wanted to comment on something that you mentioned, which was thinking back, like remembering where you were and how that can help understand why people say the things that they do. Like in a happy hour scenario, which NISM has, by the way, maybe Jen could even pop some info into that. They're fantastic virtual happy hours, obviously, because we're all over the world. But in like that kind of relaxed conversation, right? These are the things that social media strategists talk about. I can't believe they're trying to do this again, or I can't believe they said this. And that's amongst friends and colleagues, and we understand each other. But you get that little minute to decompress and complain. But then if you're able to come back to that root of like, yeah, but I remember when I thought that. And it just helps you find, right? Like it helps you find how to connect with them, what to say to them, to help educate them in a way that will make sense, because you can remember you were there once too. So
yeah.
I wanted to share, Teresa in the chat here shared that the way things constantly change in the social media world, it is truly on the job training all the time. We had a lot of people in our chat that resonated with. So we're going to move on to our second question, and we're going to rotate again. So we'll ask Ashley to answer this for the first time. And some of us alluded to how our SMS has helped us in general. But we just want to ask you again, as you kind of look back, now you're post-certification, you have the credential. If somebody asks you, passing on the street, hey, you've done this SMS, you did the studying, you invested the time, you took the test, how are you better for it? How has it helped you? Ashley, do you want to start us off?
One of the things that comes to mind almost automatically is the networking, and the fact that even though I live in a little bitty small town and I work from home, that I now have this huge network that I could go to and consult with and learn from. And also to prevent having to take the recertification test, all the options that are available, for example, the Google Analytics and different things along those lines, I feel that it's going to help me be even better than what I already currently am.
That community structure, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I know that even myself, putting things together, teaching things, having to keep up, research is right on that list of like we have such busy lives. This good stuff gets away from us. So that structure, that makes a ton of sense. How about you, Amanda? How have you seen your SMS help you?
Yeah, I think it's just, I saw in the chat somebody mentioned experiencing imposter syndrome. And so I think for me, personally, I hate public speaking. So this is, a little bit outside the box for me. But I think that, just having the SMS and being able to walk into the room and know that I'm, I don't want to say I'm the smartest one in the room, because that's not the truth, but no, I know what I'm talking about. And so just having that confidence when you're going in and talking to somebody and, just trying to guide them in, their social planning or whatever. I think for me personally, that's how it's helped me professionally.
Panel, and I've shared with other people, one of my favorite client stories was the client that it was through a consulting firm, and they hired me because I had my certification, and they said, you know, one of the first conversations I had was, you know, we just think it's so fantastic that you have this social media strategy certification. Like, what is that? And it always struck me as so funny because and it was, again, what we just talked about, it's that opportunity for education. But they didn't even know what it was. But at the time, you know, 5-6 years ago, the market was so hungry for regulation and security that they were on board. You know, they didn't have to think much about it. How about you, Katie? How has your SMS helped you?
Yeah, so it's proven incredibly helpful in my various roles. You know, as an educator, I teach digital community and building and marketing. You know, I can readily break down core concepts as related to social media management and marketing for students in a really relational way, a holistic way. You know, and as a consultant, as Amanda mentioned, you know, walking in confidently, looking at an organization holistically, asking the right questions. I think that's a core part of what we do, is not really, we guide, of course, but we also have to ask questions and more importantly, listen to get at the heart of, you know, how an organization can meet their goals. And then of course, as a marketing professional myself and as a social media strategist myself, I know the processes that I need to put in place to support my organization. So the SMS has really opened up so many different doors in all of my different roles. Even as a consultant, you know, I'm able, especially the networking side, you know, that Ashley said, you know, I think it's just a lot about long-term clients and, you know, connecting within the SMS community as well. So it's been tremendous, to be honest.
So if we can continue on, because we started addressing this imposter syndrome question, I think we should keep going on that because it's related before we come back to one of our other questions. So someone from the group did ask about imposter syndrome. I think we're up to Amanda starting with the answers. Any tips or thoughts on combating that? And if no tips, that's okay too, but anything come to mind, and then we'll hear from everybody else as well.
Just in terms of overcoming that, or
feeling it,
yeah,
overcoming
I think
it, you know,
just arming yourself with the most information that you possibly can. I'm one of those people, like I thrive on learning, and so anytime that I can learn something and, you know, be able to pass that along to somebody, I really, that's the part of the job that I really enjoy. So I think, I don't know that that's a direct imposter syndrome, but, you know, just sharing your knowledge with other people, like that just gives me, you know, I think that helps me just overcome that the most.
Yeah, so that idea of the good that will result is so good, it gets you to the other side. I have a handful of things in my life where that is the main motivator. That's a great point. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, I think, so I suffer from imposter syndrome every time I do anything related to our roles. It's crazy. You know, I think surrounding yourself with people that you can be honest with and being like, hey, I am freaking out, and they understand your role. I have a crew of marketing professionals that I rely on for that purpose. You know, to just kind of bounce ideas off of and chat through what I'm feeling in the moment. Again, I also thrive on making sure that I have enough knowledge and, you know, to kind of combat that fear of I don't know what I'm doing. I also find being able to really just connect the dots in a way and get organized around strategy is super helpful too. So if you're feeling like you're struggling with, you know, core concepts, or how am I going to present this to someone, sitting down and chatting with other SMS professionals is really helpful too. So even if they're not in your immediate squad, reaching out, you can always reach out to me. I'm always happy to bounce ideas off. You know, I think being able to say like, hey, is this the right idea? Or am I right in feeling this way? I think that kind of validation can help you work through some of those imposter feelings, and know that you're not alone. I think that's the other facet of this too, is that we all struggle. I have been an SMS, certified professional for I think 4 years now. I've been in the field for over 8. It's part of this role, I think, and unfortunately in our industry, it's pretty common. So know that you're not alone in that feeling too.
And Katie, I think you touched on an important point too. If we are feeling that imposter syndrome feeling, sometimes it's because we somehow assign to ourselves that everybody thinks we should know everything, and that, or maybe that we should know everything. And maybe somebody's thinking that, but they are definitely an incredibly small percentage of the population that's thinking that, right? Like a lot of it, I hate saying that it's made up because it makes it sound, I don't want to invalidate that feeling, right? But it is a lot of times our perception that people think so much. Yeah. And it's just not, I constantly say things like, hey, I can get, to this degree, I want to double check on the rest of this information, or it would be great to bring in, an expert in this area, because and nobody's expecting anything different. So
I think to that point too, not to jump poor Ashley's response, but I think being able to say, I know this part of social media management or community management or marketing very well, and you have people around you that are experts in SEO or in web dev or any of the other facets of the job that we might hit, and then you can rely on those humans and be like, help me out here. I need to call on you to bring in for a consulting call or for just general feedback. So.
And that is a great comment from Callie in our audience here. One of the biggest tools in our toolbox is friends to bounce ideas and thoughts off. We put so much pressure on ourselves. It's so important to have friends who are knowledgeable in the fields around us. So, so what about you, Ashley? And you kind of alluded to this a little bit in your discussion of kind of like how it's helped you, but anything that you would add about how to get through that imposter syndrome feeling?
I would say I would echo Amanda and Katie by saying just the knowledge and utilizing your resources. And of course, like I mentioned before, the networking, but also reminding yourself that you do know a lot, and that though you may not be an expert, you still know enough to where your clients or the people at your job, they're relying on you to do something because they put the trust in you to do so. So that would be what I would add to that.
Yeah, that's great. I too, speaking of community, a lot of times how I'll introduce myself is I'll say, like, this is what, don't hire me because you think I can rattle off what buttons to push. Hire me to help with your strategy. And if you really want to go in detail on a specific platform and do something super unique, I will find you the person who knows how to do that, right? Because of the community and because of the people that we spend time with. So sometimes maybe it's just kind of creating our own or clarifying our own environment. Okay, so the last kind of prep question that we had, we snuck some in from the audience there, which was perfect. One of the things I like to ask people who have accomplished something or anything is, what would you tell your past self as you were getting ready, so as you were thinking through and kind of preparing and thinking about taking the SMS exam? What would you tell yourself? It can be, and you can do anything from something that you would have done differently to something that you would have emphasized. The sky's the limit. So I've lost track of who's up for first. Does anybody want to jump in with their answer?
I can go first.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. All right, Ashley, you go.
Ashley, then Katie. Okay, done.
I would schedule my test date as soon as possible. That way I knew that I actually had a deadline. Because what I did was I started studying, and shout out to RJ because he and I hooked up and we were study buddies. But I never had a date, which meant, I could take it at any time. And I would put it off. It probably took me probably a good portion of 2020 and into 2021. before I was like, you know what, I really need to do that. And then once I did it, then it was solid. I knew that I actually, I needed to get it done.
So I feel like we're already getting a lot of head nodding from the panel, and also some agreement in the chat already on what we would tell our past selves about that. That's very good. Feel free to raise a hand if you are on board with Ashley and saying that is definitely a conversation that you would have with your past self. Get that test date on the calendar so that you have something you're working towards. Helps us make good choices. That is a really good one. Katie, that's the lead in. What do you got to add to our conversations with our past selves?
It's exactly what I would have said too. I wish I started sooner, both on the certification side as well as investing in my professional development. I think I'm very glad that I pursued, my continuing development and made it a priority. I spent an inordinate amount of time saying, how long do how do I advance in this field? Do I need a degree? Do I need to go back for, a master's or doctorate? Should I pursue this certification or that opportunity? And I wish I had just done it all as fast as I could have done it. And I also think I wish I would have started pursuing my professional brand a little bit sooner. So on the flip side of both SMS and being, a marketer, I think being able to recognize that I can provide value, not as like some self-aggrandized thought leader, but really as like a mentor, a teacher, a colleague. I think I would have been better off professionally, and I probably would have been happier if I had just jumped in and said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I had a ton of encouragement, similar to other panelists from Jen. I spent a lot of time talking with Jen about, what is the value of this, and is this, worth my time? And 100% yes. And she's obviously very convincing. So yeah, I think encouraging folks to really take a look at and do some self-reflecting about how do you want to continue as a marketer, digging into what you like about the facets of marketing, and then really deciding, okay, I am weakest in this part, I'm going to go address that. So being able to address not only your strengths, but your weaknesses as a marketer, as a professional, and just committing to it. It's scary, but it's 100% worth it when you dig into it.
So that's a really great point too, like this natural tendency to read up and really enjoy certain aspects, because we've got the 6 content domains. So like I've totally felt this. So I share this because I feel like we're friends. I would not if I didn't feel secure. I love compliance and governance, right? I mean, this is a really fast way to end.
I scored the highest on that one.
Yeah. So that section was interesting for me. It was easy for me to study, and other sections weren't like that. And so, Katie, I think that was just a great call out, like knowing that about yourself, because you're going to naturally gravitate towards studying those sections that you kind of enjoy. And that's not to say your prep should be all suffering, but just keep an honest track of yourself and make sure that you're giving as much or more love to those areas that you're not as inclined toward. So, Amanda, 5 years ago, you're sitting across from the table and you're talking to younger Amanda. What would you tell her?
I think when it comes to the test itself, I know test anxiety is totally a thing for people out there. And I would have to say, first of all, I want to give a shout out to at least the 3 people in the chat that I've seen who are who either already have their testing scheduled or that's on their goal for kind of this, I saw this quarter. So shout out to all of you. And this is for you. Don't psych yourself out when it comes to the test and the information included. We do this job every day, and you know what you're doing. And so I don't feel like the test was full of like gotcha moments. I mean, these are things that we are we're doing in our everyday jobs. So I would just definitely say, like, don't overthink it. You just you do this, you know it, and you got this. So
fantastic. I love that. I want to share one little thing about test taking. Test taking is one of my favorite topics to coach people on. There's just so much stuff. I love talking to people about it. So, and I will share my personal story. I have 3 certifications. One is the SMS. So not the SMS, a different certification. I sat down and I was nervous, because you're always nervous. And the first question that came up was one I didn't know the answer to. And that was probably one of I'm not kidding. I almost started crying because I'm like, did they load the wrong test? I don't even know what's happening right now.
No.
And I answered it and moved on and was fine. Right. Like it was a really unfortunate twist that I think that exam had like 300 questions on it. It was much longer than the SMS. But I say that because you are in control of you and you need to keep your wits about you. And just like Amanda said, go in knowing you know this stuff. And if a question pops up and you're like, I don't know the answer to that, well, it's a good thing there's 149 or 64 others or whatever, you'll be fine. So like, don't let a bump in the road totally throw you. Okay. Fantastic. I'm going to look through my list here, make sure I don't have any new questions coming in. But while I do that, let's hear from the panelists about any specific tip or trick you have learned in social media that you love. So maybe this is a tool, maybe this is something you tell new people. So this is a little bit away from your certification, but this is just being that practicing social media professional. What's your favorite thing to tell people? Any volunteers to go first?
I can. It's not necessarily a tip or trick, but audit and report often. I could honestly spend an entire hour talking about auditing and reporting, but really arming yourself with the knowledge of where you actually are in your social media channels, in your marketing strategy is so helpful, because then when you have people pinning you down in an elevator asking about a new TikTok account, you can say, I'm sorry, we don't have the scale or resources in which to pursue that right now. So I very much stay on top of your reporting as much as you can, and create a framework for yourself, because it's only going to help you educate not only your clients, but also your internal stakeholders. And it's also going to protect you in those really awkward moments in elevators. So.
There's nowhere to go, nowhere to run.
Yeah.
All right.
Horrible.
From Ashley or Amanda, anything come to mind?
I think I would say my tip is, and this is hard for me, but sometimes you just kind of have to let go. You have to take a break. I know as social managers, we're expected to be on 24/7. And I think in the beginning for me, I bought into that completely, and I don't know if it's now becoming a parent and, having a kid who, I want to give them my time and attention. That's made it easier for me to be able to like back away and not be on all the time or whatever it is. But especially I think when you're a team of one, you really feel that obligation to just, be on all the time. So my tip is, do not be afraid to, silence the notifications, walk away, take a walk, take a vacation. It's going to make you better at your job overall.
So this is a great point, and something that we can learn from the pandemic, right? How many of us had a very similar story when we started working remotely, when we weren't working remotely before? It's that same principle where we feel like because we always can work, we should always be working. So it really does require next level self-care to manually disconnect and recognize that you don't. And if you are on a big brand, you make a plan for that. Like maybe you have a brand that needs to be constantly monitored. So you follow the sun and you have people who are always monitoring, but it never has to always be you. Never. So Ashley, anything you want to throw in there?
I know I would have to agree with Amanda, take a break. I know I did not do that to an absolute fault at one position that I had, and I was constantly like to the point to where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I would roll over and check my phone. That's how bad it was, and it is not good um, for your psyche because you get wrapped up so much. But I have to still remember to take a break because of when I get into content creation. I will sit down and I will start to plan out my month, and then before I know it, 3 or 4 hours have gone by, and it's like crap. I need to get up and do something. Um, but other than that, I would let's see, also say data. I hear within the last probably year and a half or so, I've gotten really into data and what it shows, and as a result, what needs to be fixed or changed in order to get the end product that you need. So that would probably be my other tip.
Nice, very nice. I was laughing thinking about getting kind of lost in things. If you wear like a Garmin or a Fitbit, you ever get those alerts where it's like it's time to move, and I'm like,
I still ignore it.
I'm doing stuff.
I ignore it.
It's a funny to be so kind of engrossed in that, but it's a balance of self-care that is so incredibly important. As promised, I said sometimes I would join in. I want to answer this one because the one thing that I learned consulting was if you have a client or a leader who says, I trust you, I don't need updates, you don't have to send info, you don't have to check in, do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
It's a wonderful compliment, right? Like, and you should ride the high of being like, oh, I'm so happy that they trust me. But what happens is then tides can shift or questions come up, and then that person who's usually representing you at the table can't speak to the work that you're doing. So, okay. We had another question from the group that kind of relates to this, so I want to kind of sneak it in. Alexis wants to hear about your study space. What worked for you? And I'd like to expand this to space and materials. Like, is there anything that you did with your space or materials that worked really well?
So I'll go first. When I started NISM, I was probably year 4 into my career in higher ed. And so I made note cards, like big giant note cards. Like I went old, I know that's so old school and I'm probably showing my age, but I downloaded the study guide, started to dig through I started with the components that I thought were my weakest, and turns out that I was completely incorrect. And then shifted to, the other areas of the NISM test and worked my way through those. I literally did it in our spare bedroom. I didn't have an office at the time at home. So I was working on the fly on evenings after work. And I did have a deadline. I had a circumstance where I booked my test immediately and literally had about, I think it was 1.5 months to 2 months to kind of study. So I thrive under pressure and kind of pulled it together. And so I took a ton of notes. I actually utilized the NISM sample test, the test that you can take to kind of see where you are. So I actually did that twice. I did data. I'm such a data dork. I was I benchmark where I was in the beginning, and I was okay, where am I? I'm going to study for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to take it again and see where I am. So I very much went about it methodically. But in terms of my study space, I was fighting the pets, the husband, and the job for attention and space. So there wasn't anything truly unique about my space.
Stuff. I want to hear from Amanda and Ashley as well, but some great stuff has already come up in the chat. Amanda, I forgot that you wrote a blog about self-study, so she has shared that. Please open that up and check it out. at a later time. Katie, just so you don't miss it, I have flashcards on my desk, and there's a lot of love in the chat actually about flashcards. I mean, I think you really did a note with the flashcards. And then there was another one in here. Oh, and I lost track of it. There was one more thing that somebody had chimed in. Okay, it'll come to me, and I'll re-emphasize the comment. We're getting so much chatter now, I'm losing it. So, Ashley or Amanda, did you want to share a little bit about your space and material content?
There was nothing real special about my space. I sat on the couch and read the book. And then when I know I had mentioned RJ earlier, he had to jump off, but he and I did Zoom meetings. If we couldn't do it once a week, it was every other week, and we just kind of discussed what we had read and asked each other questions, and just kind of created a network of during that study time. So nothing too
How
special.
did you connect with RJ, Ashley? Just curious, in case other folks are trying to connect with folks taking the SMS certification.
Actually, Jen,
Jen?
it was
Okay.
inside the group, our NISM group, and I don't remember exactly how it started, but she tagged one of us and said, "Hey, so and so is also looking for a
Smart.
study help. Maybe you guys could connect," and that's how we ended up doing it.
Yeah.
Nice. And what a great testimony for the importance of that accountability. And thanks to Molly's comment, I remembered what I was going to share, which was Ashley had commented that she created a lot of the flashcards, like she wrote out her flashcards and she didn't use them. I actually hear that all the time because the act of creating the flashcards is what's most beneficial to a big chunk of people. So a very normal, whether it was intentional or not, who knows, but a very common experience that actually just creating them is a big piece of the help. Amanda, how about you, our blog contributor on this very topic?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I had just finished a certificate through university that was all online. So I was pretty much used to doing things on my own. And so for me, what worked best, yes, shout out to the practice test. That is a really great resource, especially if you're having that test anxiety. It just gave me, like, I could sit back and go, okay, I know more than I thought I did, and here's where I need to concentrate, more on focusing on the reading and things like that. And because I chose to study and take the test in such a short period of time, I actually just broke it up and did one content domain per week. Well, that was my plan. It didn't always work out that way. There were a couple of pieces that I thought, well, I could use a little bit longer on that. So, I mean, I think just breaking it up into manageable bits for you, that's probably the best thing, especially if you're a working professional. And then the other thing that was my time. My phone got shut off, put to the side, and it was all about focusing on studying and preparing. So
it's a great point about making that commitment, but then also controlling that physical environment. Our phones are a great example.
As my phone goes off right now.
Right.
Well,
too.
Okay. I got do not disturb on.
Look at the phantom limb thing, right? Like when we don't have our phones, we're like, I wonder if my phone is okay. It's in the other room, and it's making that conscious choice. Another fun one I heard was it was a woman who had a spouse and 2 children, and she made a little sign, and whenever it was on the study room door, everybody had to wait outside, and she was never gone for very long. She did studying in kind of short bursts, but what that actually boils down to, like how you do it, is going to vary, and isn't nearly as important as having that conversation with the people in your life. So sometimes it's talking to your boss about the fact that for the next 8 weeks, you're going to take a lunch every day. Sometimes it's talking to your spouse about, hey, for the next 12 weeks, I'm going to need you to pick up a little bit of the portion of the household management that I do because I'm studying for this exam. Whatever it is that serves you, we can't manifest it in our environment or just like think that people will just know these things. We have to have the conversation. So, okay. So funny enough, I think we just lost Katie, and my next question was for Katie. So I'm going to go back. I mean, isn't that the way that it always goes? We are down to our last 8 minutes here, so I just want to check and make sure I didn't miss any of them here. So I do have one more queued up for this group here. We talked in the beginning about the fact that most of us, in fact, did not start in marketing or on a path for marketing, but that was kind of one of the questions, you know, like how did you end up in marketing if that wasn't your original path? You know, like what was the course of your career, I think is a little bit of what people are interested in hearing. And I'll add to that, how does that affect you as a certified strategist? Oh, and sorry, I didn't designate anyone to go first. Amanda, go ahead.
I'll start. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but when I was in college for web design, it was the hottest career out there. They were not keeping people in the program long enough in order to get them graduated. They, were getting jobs right, pulling you right out of school. When I graduated in 2002, there hadn't been a job placement through the Career Center in 6 months for that field. So I think, like a lot of college grads, you just you suck it up and you just go out and you find a job. I didn't work in the field at all until the position came available as the assistant web services coordinator at the university. And then I thought, finally, my parents were like, great, she's finally going to use that degree. And, it ended up being like a split second of, web design. And then I transitioned into social media. And my mom said yesterday when we were chatting, she's like, now explain to me what is it you do?
I love that question.
And I've been doing this for 9 years. So, I think that's probably a fairly common question for people. So, that's really just how I ended up here. And actually, I think it's worked out for the best. So,
and the diverse nature of the job really is the name of the game, right? I can't even remember what I was doing. But somebody said like, oh, I thought you worked in social media. I didn't know you did, whatever. And I'm like, that is social media. It's all social media. Like, it's just all the everything. Just get on board, And but it's a good fit for people who aren't interested in having the same day twice, right? Because there's always something new coming our way. Ashley, what about you? I know that you shared a little bit, and then but can you tell us a little bit more about your journey into social media marketing?
Sure. When I got together with my husband, he was a big business owner, minded, that is, and we started a thrift/discount/computer service company. And when we realized that we didn't have a website, my whole journey started down with, hey, how long do you think it's going to take you to sit down and create a quick website? And then it just kind of started rolling from there. And since I was basically the one-man show at the store, I had to do everything from A to Z to make sure that everything was running smoothly, and that included marketing on social media. So it was a lot of learning as I went, and disappointing my parents in the long run, Amanda, because they just could not figure out why I was not doing education, because since I went to school and had 2 degrees in that area. But in the end, it was I couldn't be happier. I mean, because I did along that journey, I did teach for about a year. Well, actually 2 years. But then when I look back at how I was during those 2 years and then see where I'm at now, I'm like, okay, I made the right decision.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
We are almost out of time, and so and I know Katie is keeping up in the chat as well. But I want to get one more question from our audience out to this group, which is, what are some of the job titles, job roles that people take on in social media? Like, so for example, my social media work has taken me to teaching, writing, consulting. But I've never had a named social media role in a traditional company. I've always been in that little bit of a, is that a fringe? I've always had it in freelance roles, but those are very different applications, right? So what would you three add to that? Other job roles that you see social media professionals working in?
So I'll take that first. I've been in 4 or 5 industries across since I started as a marketer. I have never had the social media in my job title whatsoever. I am, as I said, the director of marketing and communications right now for a nonprofit. I have also been an event and program development manager, which was social combined with event management. I've been an educator and a consultant. I've also led conferences. There's a ton of things that you can do as a social media professional and as a marketer that just goes so much beyond that title. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of industries, even now, post-pandemic, are recognizing that social media is a job in and of itself. A lot of our social media is rolled into digital marketing efforts, content strategy, digital marketing managers. There's content managers, it runs the gamut, unfortunately.
Kind of like what Amanda like how she got into it. It was like, oh, you're doing this other stuff. You can do Facebook too, right? Sure.
Yeah. I was the youngest in the room when I started, and they were like, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, okay.
Happens all the time. I would say the youngest person, or like they bring in the nephew of the CFO. That was always my two things of like why they ended up hiring me was because they started their social media with one of those two tabs.
Right.
Yep.
So I think we will stay on and chat like just for a couple of minutes, but my clock just turned over to the end of the hour, and I want to be respectful of the fact that people have to get back to their jobs and all of that good stuff. So just in case people do have to log off, I want to make sure they are here to hear me say thank you for your great questions and participations, and a huge thank you to our fantastic panelists. They shared earlier in the chat best ways to connect with them. But if you have any trouble finding them, of course, you can always reach out to the National Institute for Social Media. We're always happy to connect our community members. So Ashley, Katie, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights today. It was so fun and so great to hear from you. So as people are logging off, anything else from our panelists that you all would like to share?
That was fantastic. Thanks for having us.
I know, to piggyback off the last question, I know that I've been asked from several clients, past and present, hey, can you do this? And I sit there and I go, well, for example, with my current, with the coding boot camp, at one point when we first started working together, they said, hey, can you write blogs? And I went, sure. So just to kind of be, 100% agree with, there is no solid specific title. You'll end up doing everything.
And it's also a perfect reason to stay involved with your community, because inevitably somebody will ask you if you can do something like the artistic element of branding. I will never take that on. I might be colorblind and they just can't test it. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. And but you know that, and that
Yeah.
heightens your appreciation for the people in your community that you can then
Right.
reach out, because yes, expand. Yeah, oh sure, I can write blog, I can, you know, I can do all that stuff. Eventually though, you're gonna hit something where you're gonna, the wiser part of your brain is gonna be like, yeah, don't do it. Don't do
Yeah.
it.
I think there's power in knowing when you can say no. You know, I think when I started as a young professional, I was like, yes, absolutely, I can do whatever you need me to do. And now I'm like, nope, can't do it. Sorry. Like,
You
you know, and I think
learn how to do it.
exactly. I'm like, do I have the time? Can I really learn this? Yes, no, okay. Like, it's being more judicious about the projects that you take on and the challenges that you take on. And sorry, I cut Amanda off before.
Amanda,
So.
yeah.
I mean, you know, I think at some point in my career, I will say, no, I will not put the mascot suit on and dance. I haven't reached that point yet,
Sure.
but we're gonna get there.
But that's the line. I mean, you guys know where the line is. So
Know your boundaries.
Yeah, I've identified it. That's the first step.
I can't think of a better note to go
Way
on
to end it.
than the line of the.
Don't be the mascot.
Thank you, everybody, panelists, attendees, for the great conversation today. We'll see you on February 22nd for our next webinar. Look for that to be posted towards the end of this week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.